Hi, this is Matt from tracyandmatt.co.uk and for unboxings.com. Here I have the Xacti HD2000, which is kind of the newer version of the HD1000 and the HD1010. Incidentally, we're actually recording the video on an HD1000 at the moment. Very similar in design, but we're going to go through and give you a quick tour, show you what's in the box, and then we'll talk about the device, the camera itself, in a little bit more detail. So right on top we have a camera bag, which is padded and has a drawstring on top, which is quite handy, and you can even use the soft camera bag to clean the camera, which is also handy. Have you the international getting started instruction manual and the Xacti software and the quick Xacti manual there. So inside right on top we have the camera itself, and as I say, this is very much the same as the HD1000 HD1010 that we've already reviewed. The layout and design is very similar, although it does feel a bit weightier, but we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail in just a second. We have a little strap that holds the lens cap in place, a number of inline choke filters to go around the cables. We have a small remote control which has all the basic functions of the camera. A composite video cable and S-video with the audio left and right there, and that has a proprietary style connector which plugs into the docking station, which we'll have a look at in a second. There is this USB adapter which allows us to plug USB devices into the camera. Again, talk about that in a bit more detail in a second. Have an adapter here for microphone, which allows us to plug in a standard 3.5mm microphone into a 2.5mm jack, because the camera itself has a 2.5mm jack. There is a wrist strap. We then have a USB cable, which is a USB to this small USB, which I think is proprietary. It's certainly not a mini or a micro USB, it's not standard. We then have component video cable, so we've got RGB and then the red and white for the left and right audio channels, which again has this proprietary connector on the other end that plugs into the docking station. And as I've mentioned a couple of times, here is the docking station, and the camera sits just inside the docking station like so, which gives us an HDMI, a full-size HDMI connector, that proprietary component AV cable, and then a USB, and then our mains charger plugs in here. And there is a button on the front which, when you're actually using it with the USB and you push the button, it starts up the transfer, so you can transfer the media from the camera onto the PC. So last of all, we have the charger, which is pretty standard. Plugs figure 8 there, plugs in bullet style, which can plug straight into the camera or into the docking station, and then a pretty standard figure 8 UK mains charger or mains cable. That's all we have in the box itself. So let's have a look at the camera in a bit more detail. As I say, exactly the same design as the HD1000 and the HD1010. There is a 16 times optical zoom, 16 times optical when you're recording video and 10 times optical when you're recording stills. That's up from 10 times on the HD1000 and the HD1010. And it's 160 times digital zoom if you want to use digital zoom. The sensor has been upgraded to an 8.1 megapixel, so you can record 8.1 megapixel stills, and incidentally your video is actually recorded at I think 5.3 megapixels for HD. The other change to this particular model is in the recording of HD, full HD, where we now record 1080p at 60 frames a second, which is up from 30 frames a second, so that's pretty high, and it's fairly unusual to have, certainly such a small model, to have that 60 frames a second recording, so that's a nice improvement. Other things that haven't changed are all the controls that you have on the camera itself, all exactly the same as before. You've got a switch between record and play mode, photo view mode, which actually presents on the screen the view that will actually show you what photos would be recorded like, rather than actually the sensor actually picks up the video, so that's actually a little bit of a change there. Wide angle and telephoto on a rocker here, which is actually sensitive, so if you just move it a little bit, it zooms a little bit, and if you move it a lot, it zooms a lot quicker. Menu button and camera button, so you can record your video and record your stills, and like previous models, you can record stills at the same time as recording video. So if you've got actually a video recording in progress, you can push the camera button and take a still shot, and that will record a full 8.1 megapixel still. There is also another mode which is like a retrospective still shooting mode, and when you press the camera button, it will actually record a series of stills prior to pushing the button. So it's actually buffering that all the time, and when you push that button, it will actually capture a series of still shots up to the point where you press the button. So it's quite cool. I'm not sure exactly how that works, but we'll have a look at that in a bit more detail later. We have the joystick for navigating through the menus. Again, that's unchanged. Our power on off button is here, so that when we have it open, we can actually turn the power on and off. SD card goes in the door on the back, and it will take up to 32 gig SDHC, which is very cool. Charger will plug in directly into the camera, and that goes in there. On the bottom we have the spring-loaded cover, little retractable bit over the connector that plugs into the docking station, and then a standard 1/4 inch screw thread for connecting up to a tripod. On this side we have a release where our battery pops inside, and the cover goes on like so, and then on top we have a button that releases the pop-up flash. That is just a flash, it doesn't work to illuminate your video, it is purely a xenon flash. And then we have a cover here over a cold shoe, so you can put in, plug in microphones or video lights and actually plug them into the top there. That is, as I say, is cold shoe, so it doesn't power the device in any way, and it won't work to, with a flash or anything else like that. It's purely as like a connector that you can actually sit it on there. On the front, if I just move this cover, we have two more connectors. We have a 3.5mm jack there for plugging in headphones, and then a 2.5mm jack, as I mentioned earlier on, that's for plugging in our microphone. So you can use an external microphone, which is very cool. Quick rundown of the rest of the spec. As I say, this is 16 times optical zoom, up from 10, 8.1 megapixel sensor. We record HD at 1080p, 60 frames a second, which is unusual. It's generally 30 frames a second. Minimum illumination when you're recording video is just 2 lux. That screen is a 2.7 inch LCD. HDMI output is via the docking station, as I've already shown you on the back there. Unfortunately, you can't connect up HDMI or USB to the camera itself without the docking station, which is possibly a little bit of a drawback. But obviously you can take the memory card out and you can use it with the card reader. That's all good. Lithium-ion battery is obviously included. As I say, when you're recording stills, you've only got the 10 times optical zoom, but that's no great loss. Resolution is a full 8.1 megapixels. Records at JPEG. ISO sensitivity is 50 to 3200 ISO, and as I say, SDHC up to 32 gig. We'll look at the camera in a bit more detail, and I'll give you a bit more of a tour later on, and I'll go through a bit of the menu structure when I've had a chance to actually charge up and play with the camera. And I'll do some sample video as we've done with the HD1000 and the HD1010 before, and those videos will be up online on tracymat.co.uk very soon.